So now we're going to use the type tool. We're going to come up with a title for our book, and then we're going to add the author's name, also something we're going to come up with on our own, and then we're going to adjust that size and position and color to our design satisfaction. So this is where we left off. Now, to put in a type box, the first thing that I might want to do here is kind of give me a place for things to sit. I've got a logo, an author's name, and all that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to set those margins. You remember the margins at the beginning that I said we don't have to worry about these now? Let's set them now. I want a pretty healthy margin. So I'm going to put not quite half an inch, something like that. And do you see it there, that purple line? Now when I go to W, you don't see it. That kind of helps me figure out where to place things. You can see I'm already in luck with my logo. It's sitting right on there. So I'm going to put the type here, and all I do is set it right on those margin lines, and I'm going to drag a type box that goes all the way across it. Now the name of this photo was Dogs of War. So I'm going to start with that. And again, I'm going to use Shift Command at the same time as the greater than, and that's my shortcut. And do you see how my container is not changing, only the type within the container? So let's go to our properties panel where we can kind of watch this all take place. So I'm in default mode, so I'm in Minion. Now we got to find a typeface. I'm thinking I might want to break this into 2 lines so that it takes up a little bit more of this top section. So I break it by hitting return. Now I'm going to select it and I want to make this centered. And then I want less leading. Do you see all the space between these two? So I can do it here manually by just making the number go down, or I can use the shortcut, which is the Option or Alt key and the up side. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to make it a little bigger. I've got a crashing ascender and descender there. What I might do to prevent that, because it doesn't look like it's going to be easy to get around, is I'm going to make dogs all caps. And the best way to do this is not to type it all caps, because then you're kind of stuck. Go down here, I'm still in the properties panel, go down here and make it all caps. And then if I make war all caps, now I have no ascenders and descenders crashing. So just to make this stand out a little better, I'm going to fill it with white. And because I've selected the type, it knows that I'm not working with the container. And if you look over here, you can see that it's on the type and not the container. So by selecting the type, I'm going to change the color to white just for now so I can watch it pretty easily. Okay, so Dogs of War. Now this is the default type. It's time for me to go typeface shopping. It kind of helps to size it somewhere in the neighborhood and break it somewhere like what you would want so you can actually watch what it looks like. Now, let me go back. Before I even start looking for typefaces, I have to ask myself, what do I want? What am I looking to express with this type? Now, obviously, I've got kind of a funny dog's face, but it's an old photo, and it actually is these dogs that went to war for one reason or another. So it's somewhat serious, but at the same time, it has a little bit of humor to it, and it's vintage. So I don't know that I want to necessarily put a modern typeface here. I think I want something with a little bit of history, and I think I want something sophisticated but not too sophisticated. So I have an idea of what I'm looking for in that respect. So let's go down here. Now one thing I can do is if I think I might be looking for, and you can see how these look silly. See, anything too simple or too modern and it just doesn't work. So what I could do, knowing that I'm probably going to go with a serif, nothing that heavy, I can go to filters and put the filter on serif. That way it's only going to show me serif types. You know, these seem much more in line with the kind of attitude and look of this. What might work is something like Mrs. Eves. Let me try Mrs. Eves. That's a little bit sophisticated, but it could work, especially if I change this to italic. That's kind of a trick where you can change the look of a headline with words like of, or to the, small words that don't have to be capitalized. You can make them in the script version. So this is all Mrs. Eves, and I made this Mrs. Eves italic. If you don't find a typeface here you like, this is where you go looking. Adobe Fonts. And so this is the page you'll find. And where you want to go to is All Fonts. And I'm just going to type in the text that I want to see. So Dogs of War. And sometimes you can put it in all caps if you want. Like maybe since I know that I have to go all caps on these two words or I'm going to get some crashes in my text, I'll just go ahead and put it like that. And I do think I want to do serif. So that's an easy classification. I want serif. You can also put in one of these tags. These aren't type classifications. This is just a helpful way of organizing it. So maybe I want it to look fun. So they're saying there are no fun serifs, which is actually pretty funny, but it could be true. I don't think I have anything else selected. How about funky serifs? Yep, a couple of those. Those are a little bit too funky for this story. So luxury is a little bit too kind of polished. Do you see how everything's kind of pointy at the end and it all has kind of sophistication? That doesn't really go with that dog's image, right? I want to look at his face and I want to find a typeface that goes with that. So I'm going to take off the tags because they're not that helpful anyways. And I'm just going to go through these until I find something that would work. This one's kind of interesting, but a little too stylized. Remember, this is war and a bulldog. So it's got to be kind of rough. And look at, this is the one I thought might work, and it's Mrs. Eves. So maybe I have found my perfect typeface. But in case I hadn't, this is how you would do it. Like this one looks pretty good. It's kind of chunky. So view family is the first thing you do. And then you can open up, it shows you the whole family. So this has italic, which would be great for mine. So that might work. I can activate any one of those, or I can activate all of them by just saying activate 5 fonts. Now when I go back into InDesign, I could try out that font, which is Vendetta. And I just type it out, Vendetta, and I should see the whole family. So let's try Vendetta Medium. Let's see if we like that a little bit better than Mrs. Eves. And then I would do the same thing, maybe make the of italic. Now, to make this whole thing bigger, first I'm going to look at my guide. So I'm going to put it at the very top. The logo sits at the very bottom guide. So I want this one to sit at the very top. And then I can size both the container and the type and the leading as is with this special shortcut, which is the most useful one I know. Hold Shift and Command. That will size the what's in the container and the container at the same time. You hold that before you start sizing it. And then if you want to size it from the center, just hold Option. And there you go. Dogs of War. So that's looking pretty good if I decide to use that typeface. The next thing I'm going to want to do is affect the kerning here. Do you see how there's these big spaces between some of these letters? And this is kind of tight right here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to first do a little kerning. So I'm going to set my cursor there and I'm going to go right here on the properties panel and bring it just a little closer. Do you see how it's just bringing that closer? And I'm going to do with each of these letters. Each of these letters kind of uses up a big box of space and it can be very kind of uneven. So you have to go through and do that. Now the other thing I could do is I could make of smaller. Again, I'm going to use Shift Command and the lesser than, and that'll tuck it kind of up under that W, and that might work a little better. Now on this leading, I can go a little tighter. I can bring it all the way up, right to there. And if I want to, it's so perilously close to the hat, what I might want to do is just make it a little bigger. Again, I'm going to use that Shift Command. Yeah, that's good. I want it to go slightly over the hat, and I want it to be centered. And I'm going to bring that container back into the page size. And that's looking pretty good. So now, the only other thing to do is put the author's name. So I'm going to put a piece of type here at the top. Actually, I'll set the type here to begin with. I'm going to go margin to margin, and I'm just going to make up a name. James Irving. He's an author that I like. I'm going to center that type. I'm going to make it that same typeface, which is the Vendetta. It's listed as the last type I use, so that kind of makes it easier. And then I'm going to fill that with white, and then I'm going to space it way out and make it a little bit bigger. Now I've got to find a place for that also. So I could put it down here, and this is a good time to do a preview so I can kind of see how things are looking. I think I'm going to go a little bit smaller, and what I might do is try to fit it up here. So now I've got to bring all this down, and that's where I'm going to need those margins again. So let's put James Irving right at the center on the margin, and then see how close we can get that Dogs of War. Yeah, that works. I kind of like the type over the hat, so I'm okay with that. Let's look at it in preview. Looks good. Now the only other thing I want to do design-wise is maybe I want to make the type color, some kind of color. So if I select it, I'm going to select Dogs of War, and I go here. You can see that the basic colors aren't very many to choose from. So I'll show you one way you can get a really good color scheme is you can go, like for this one, for example, I know that this is about war, so it might be kind of cool to make that Dogs of War into like a camouflage color or something like that. So what I did is I did a search of camouflage just on Google, and then I took a screenshot of the results, actually all the results, and I'm just going to set that right here. Actually, I can set it all the way across here. And these will give me some kind of army camouflage colors to work from. And there's a couple ways you can work with these. One way is you can try them out like this with a eyedropper. So I could say, let's try this green, kind of a light green, and see what that looks like. And then put this up out of the way and do our preview. That looks good. I could see how InDesign does with this color scheme by going to the eyedropper behind it to the color theme tool, and I could make a whole set of swatches out of any one of these. Do you see how it came up with all the swatches? And then you just click that and it adds it to the swatches. So you can see that it has added all those army colors, which are awesome. So I can do that with a couple of these. Like let's say I want to do one of the colors in this one. This is pretty interesting. And then add it to the swatches. So now I have all these army colors. Look at the 2 folders of colors it added to my swatches. That's a really quick way to get a lot of color swatches, is just bring it in. The Adobe Color Theme Tool, the Color Theme Tool on InDesign is the best. They don't have it in Illustrator quite like that, and I really like it. It's a quick way to get a color scheme. So I'm going to get rid of those now. I'm going to go with this green. It's what I'm looking for. I'm going to leave James Irving in white, and basically I am done. All I need to do now is the mechanical part.